Here are the top stories for today, September 14, 2021. The guidelines for the enforcement of granular lockdowns in Metro Manila are out. We find out what's allowed and what's not under this scheme aimed at protecting health and reviving the economy. President Rodrigo Duterte wants cabinet officials to secure his nod first before attending Senate hearings on supposed deficiencies on the use of government funds. He wants them to be spared from unnecessary ramblings by lawmakers running in the polls. Gaining momentum, over 38.7 million COVID-19 jabs have so far been administered in the country, with more vaccine supplies set to arrive in the coming months. And the Department of Education extends until September 30 the deadline for enrollment of students in public schools as the country continues to adopt blended learning almost 2 years into the pandemic. Good day, I am William Theo. Welcome to the PNA Newsroom. The National Capital Region will be placed under General Community Quarantine Alert Level 4 on September 16, the start of the granular lockdowns implemented amid the COVID-19 pandemic. Under Alert Level 4, outdoor or alfresco dining will operate at a maximum of 30% seating capacity regardless of vaccination status. On the other hand, indoor dining services may be allowed at a limited 10% capacity, but for fully vaccinated customers only. Personal care services limited to barbershops, hair spas, nail spas, and beauty salons, as well as religious services are allowed to operate at similar capacities. Most indoor establishments remain closed. Meanwhile, the Interagency Task Force for the Management of Emerging Infectious Diseases earlier ratified the guidelines on the granular lockdowns. Under the new guidelines, the new community quarantine classifications will have 5 alert levels that would determine the activities allowed in cities and municipalities. Areas placed under Alert Level 5 shall observe the guidelines applicable to enhanced community quarantine. Granular lockdowns must last for at least 14 days. Households within areas under granular lockdown will receive assistance from their respective local government units and the Department of Social Welfare and Development, or DSWD. The Interagency Task Force has released the guidelines to be implemented during the granular lockdowns on September 16. Local government units are expected to implement these guidelines. Marita Mawahe has the story.
The general community quarantine with alert levels will require more manpower in the implementation of granular lockdowns. Secretary Carlito Galvez Jr., Chief Implementer of the National Task Force Against COVID-19, said the government will make sure all LGUs are well prepared for the full implementation of granular lockdowns. He said the government's prevent, detect, isolate, testing, reintegration strategies will be sustained in the implementation of granular lockdowns. More contact tracers will be hired to reach at least a 1:15 tracer contacts ratio. Aside from isolating the infected, Galvez said expanded massive testing in particular areas under lockdown will be done. Meanwhile, 2 lawmakers urged the government to lift the current quarantine classifications and implementing granular lockdowns coupled with vaccine and business bubbles. Marikina City Representative Stella Kimbo and Aambis OWA Representative Sharon Garin filed House Resolution 2209, which urges the IATF to protect the public's health while safely reopening the economy. They said a more targeted response is needed in arresting the COVID-19 spread and spurring economic recovery. For the PNA Newsroom, I am Marita Muahe.
President Rodrigo Duterte is requiring all cabinet secretaries to first get his approval before attending Senate hearings. He also warned senators that citing his cabinet members in contempt for their absence would lead to a ruckus between the executive and legislation departments. The Senate Blue Ribbon Committee, led by Senator Richard Gordon, is currently probing supposed deficiencies of the Department of Health in spending COVID-19 response funds.
This time, I will require every cabinet member to clear with me any invitation. And if I think that he will be called for walang silbi except to harass, to be berated in front of the Republic. Ay hintuin ko na yan at pagbawalan ko na.
Presidential spokesperson Secretary Harry Roque earlier said the verbal attacks of President Duterte against some senators were made in defense of his innocent cabinet members.
Pero importante naman po na panindigan ng presidente ang gobyerno, no, ang mga taong gobyerno, lalong-lalo na kung sa tingin niya po ay wala naman po mga pagkakasalang nagawa. Kung meron po talagang korupsyon dito, sampahan na lang po natin ng kaso at hayaan natin ang ombudsman na magdesisyon.
Former head of the Procurement Service, Department of Budget and Management, or PSDBM, Lloyd Christopher Lau, reiterates that their department had difficulty finding bulk suppliers for personnel of government agencies, including the Department of Health. During the Senate Blue Ribbon Committee hearing, he said their department resorted to procuring the supplies outside the country, but they ceased after a local supplier offered to meet their monthly requirement.
Sagsagan ng pandemya. Note that EMS already answered. They only, with the help of DTI, DOH, DOI, and PSDBM, we assisted EMS. For 7 weeks, we assisted him so they can establish a manufacturing company. So we bought everything that they had. I think 500,000, I'm not sure, 500,000 pieces. Then Farmali came. Farmali offered it at, I think, 27 something then.
Lau said EMS offered to meet the required government volume at 13 pesos and 50 centavos per piece and started the delivery of 1 million masks around June 2020.
Ang going rate ngayon is mga 23 during that time, 24. Sabi niya, I'll give it at half the price at around 13.50. Kasali na yung taxes. Sabi ko, sige, how fast can you deliver? Sabi niya, give me 2 months to 3 months. I will deliver. Sabi ko, oh, how much is your capacity? Sabi niya, depende. Anong capacity mo? Sabi ko, based on data, April and May, we usually consume around 5 million. 5 million. Sabi ko, minimum yun. 5 million from DOH and other agencies. Sabi niya, oh, sige, give me a 1-year contract, tapos I will provide. Magkano kaya mo? Sabi niya, around 5 to 10 million a month.
Meanwhile, Health Secretary Francisco Duque III said an acute demand for face masks created a higher price at the start of the pandemic.
At that time, when the 13 plus pesos per piece was the price that EMS had indicated, this was not in April but in June. If my recollection serves me right. So the timing of the availability is a big factor, I believe, in the determination of the correct price vis-a-vis the suggested retail price that the DTI had set at 28 pesos then in March 13 of 2020, Your Honor.
Senator Manny Pacquiao then asked Secretary Duque and Lau if there was corruption in their contracts.
Ano po sa tingin niyo, may korupsyon o wala?
Doon po sa hanay o sa panig ng Department of Health ay katulad ng sinabi ng chairman ng Commission on Audit, yung kanilang audit findings, wala naman pong nakalagay doon that money was lost to corruption. So yun lang po. Salamat po.
Katulad ng sintinang kay Secretary Duque, may corruption ba sa ating gobyerno o wala?
Wala po, Mr. Chairman. We do our best to do what is good for the country.
Former presidential advisor Michael Yang will now be included in the watch list of immigration authorities. This, as Justice Secretary Menardo Guevara says he has received Senator Gordon's letter today requesting to put Yang in the Immigration Lookout Bulletin after he failed to appear in the Blue Ribbon Committee hearing yesterday. The DOJ earlier released an Immigration Lookout Order bulletin against Lloyd Christopher Lau and 7 others as requested by Senate President Vicente Soto III. This is in connection with the upper chamber's inquiry on the alleged overpriced medical supplies and equipment. Yang's lawyer, attorney Raymond Fortun, said his client was suffering from hypertension. The government is bent on expanding the country's herd immunity target as more and more people are getting vaccinated against COVID-19. The Philippines has so far administered over 38 million doses of the COVID-19 vaccines nationwide. The NTF vaccination dashboard data showed that almost 22,000 have received the first shot, while almost 17,000 have completed 2 doses. The average daily jabs administered in the last 7 days stood at 415,362 doses. Vaccine Secretary Carlito Galvez Jr. said the government is working on the procurement of the reformulated booster jabs against highly contagious variants like the Delta. He also assured that the government will prioritize healthcare workers for booster shots. Meanwhile, Galvez said the government would need to vaccinate 20 million individuals from the adolescent and pediatric groups to achieve herd immunity targets. However, the vaccination of those 18 years of age and above must be completed first. Galvez said expanding the country's COVID-19 vaccine coverage will help counter the threats posed by the fast-spreading Delta variant. Galvez, meanwhile, assured that there is no favoritism in the distribution of vaccines. He earlier said there will be an equitable distribution of vaccines nationwide. For his part, National Task Force Medical Advisor Dr. Ted Herbosa said there is a systematic deployment of COVID-19 vaccines nationwide based on the number of vaccination centers per local government unit and its population. Recruitment of participants for the clinical trials on the use of ivermectin will start on October 15. DOST Secretary Fortunato de la Peña stressed that the World Health Organization or WHO did not endorse ivermectin for COVID-19 use, but only for clinical trial purposes.
At ang plano pong participants ay 1,464 na magkakombinasyon na doon yung asymptomatic at symptomatic patients. Pero hindi kasama, wala naman po yung hindi with non-severe COVID-19. At na-identify na rin po yung mga study sites dito. Actually, yung mga quarantine centers po, 4 yung binanggit dito sa Ateneo, sa Lasal, sa UP, at meron pang isang quarantine center na binanggit.
Still to come, the palace clarifies savings from the 2020 national budget were used to fund infrastructure facilities for COVID-19 response. And students have until September 30 in public schools to enroll as distance learning continues. Details ahead. This is the PNA Newsroom.
Kung customer ka, pupuntahan mo ba yung mukhang safe naman o yung certified na safe? Ang safety seal ay patunay na certified safe ang iyong business dahil nasusunod ang minimum public health standards. Meron din itong QR code para mapadali ang contact tracing. Ito ay libre lang. Pero, kailangang i-renew every 6 months or every year kung nasa tourism sector ang iyong business. Kung meron ka ng mga documents na ito, pwede ka na mag-apply para sa Safety Seal Certification. May iba-ibang office para sa iba't ibang klase ng mga negosyo. Pag na-determine nyo na ang issuing authority, simple lang ang steps para makuha ang safety seal. Pumunta sa office ng issuing authority o sa kanilang website. Kumuha ng safety seal checklist at magsagawa ng self-assessment para sa iyong business. I-submit ang checklist at abangan ang inspection schedule. Pag na-approve ang application, bibigyan kayo ng safety seal sticker. Pag hindi naman na-approve, sasabihin kung anong health standard ang hindi nasunod at bibigyan kayo ng pagkakataong ayusin ito. Pag nakuha na ang safety seal, ipaskil ito sa may entrance para makita agad ng mga customer. Pwede nyo rin ipagmalaki na certified safe kayo sa inyong mga social media pages. Paalala lamang, ang isang safety seal ay para sa isang branch lang. Siguraduhin bawat branch mo ay certified safe. Siguraduhin din na nasusunod palagi ang minimum public health standards dahil baka mabawi ang iyong certification. Maaring mag-operate kahit na walang safety seal. Pero hindi ba mas mahalagang kampante ang mga customer sa loob ng iyong negosyo? Kaya kumuha na ng safety seal para ingat-angat tayong lahat.
Presidential spokesperson Harry Roque explained that savings from the government's discontinued programs are being used for other projects and programs related to the COVID-19 response. In his reaction to former Bayan Muna Representative Nery Colmenares, who questioned the realignment of contingent funds, Colmenares said the government diverted the funds to non-urgent projects such as the construction of swimming pools, convention centers, and even a cruise ship port.
Wala po akong personal na nalalaman ng mga hindi nagastos na pondo na napunta sa infrastructure na hindi po related sa COVID. Ang alam ko po, marami tayong mga infrastructure gaya ng mga makeshift hospitals, no, na tinatayo para pa nga po maparami yung ating mga bed capacity pagdating po sa mga pasyente ng COVID.
A House of Representatives panel pushed for a 20% discount for barangay health workers to provide them proper compensation during the COVID-19 pandemic. The House Ways and Means Committee approved the unnumbered substitute bill to several measures proposing for a Magna Carta for barangay health workers. Under the bill, barangay health workers may receive discounts for health expenses, public transport fares, hotels and restaurants, theaters and cinemas, and burial and death care expenses. The original proposal was to grant a 10% discount and a value-added tax exemption to BHWs only for their medical needs. Albay Representative Joey Salceda said the added provision honors the social obligation owed to barangay health workers, most of whom were not compensated for the risk they took during the pandemic and who were not included in the Bayanihan to Recover as One Act. Barangay health workers in the province of Antique will receive monthly financial remuneration of not less than 1,000 pesos. Board member Mayela May Plameras Ladislao said her ordinance granting benefits, incentives, and protection to BHWs was approved by the provincial board on September 9. Plameras Ladislao said the BHWs who are volunteering their services in ensuring health promotion deserve the monthly financial remuneration, which will be released by the provincial government semi-annually. Melanie Reymaro, president of the Association of Barangay Health Workers in the municipality of Sibalom, said that previously they only received an annual honorarium of 3,000 pesos and was increased to 8,500 pesos last year. She said the 1,000 peso remuneration each month or 12,000 for the whole year under the ordinance will surely give them more leeway. Malacanang said President Rodrigo Duterte has yet to give his go signal to hold face-to-face classes in pilot areas where the COVID-19 risk is low. Presidential spokesperson Secretary Harry Roque said this is despite the positive reaction to the proposal of Education Secretary Leonor Briones to hold limited face-to-face classes, although his initial reluctance may change. The DepEd is planning to hold a dry run of limited in-person classes in some 150 schools in areas where there is low COVID-19 risk. Duterte has repeatedly rejected DepEd's proposal for pilot face-to-face classes due to concerns of more infectious variants of COVID-19. The United Nations Children's Fund, or UNICEF, earlier urged the governments worldwide to start the phased reopening of schools as soon as possible, saying prolonged school closures have an adverse impact on learners. The Department of Education said it would accept enrollees for school year 2021 to 2022 until September 30 in the hope of surpassing the number of enrollees the previous school year. The department had set up a public assistance command center under Oplan Balik Eskwela to ensure that learners are properly enrolled. On Monday, the DepEd official opened classes in public and private schools for the school year 2021 to 2022, where blended learning is set to continue pending Duterte's decision. At least 24.6 million learners have so far enrolled in private and public schools nationwide. Presidential Communications Operations Office Secretary Martin Andanar supported anew the establishment of capacity-building initiatives that will help hone the leadership skills and confidence of the youth. During the Cabinet Officer for Regional Development and Security for Northern Mindanao podcast on September 11, Andanar praised the Sangguniang Kabataan Federation of Bukidnon for demonstrating their genuine care for their community amid the threats posed by the pandemic. He highlighted the need to teach the youth valuable life skills, being responsible, self-confidence, and compassion to establish capable and effective leaders in the future. Bukidnon SK President Princess Grace Gayon discussed in the podcast some of the programs they have undertaken to capacitate the youth in partnership with the Bukidnon provincial government. Up next, bikers in Cebu City are reminded to wear face masks. And goodies await dogs that will be vaccinated against rabies in a pantry in Legazpi City. Back after a quick break, stay with the PNA Newsroom. You're still watching the PNA Newsroom. Cebu City Police have told bikers to wear a face mask while riding for leisure or work, or else get citation tickets. The Cebu City Police Office said roving cops over the weekend apprehended 20 bikers who were caught not wearing any protective gear against COVID-19. The police office said wearing a face mask is necessary for preventing COVID-19 transmission, even if biking while the nose and mouth are covered with a mask is difficult. It said continued defiance of health protocols by bikers mean they will have to recommend to cancel the privilege of biking outside despite the pandemic. The police will also apprehend establishments that will allow the gathering of bikers and violate the physical distancing protocols. The number of registrants to the government's Philippine Identification System, or PhilSys, in Negros Oriental has already reached 78% of the target for this year. The Philippine Statistics Authority said satellite registrations in the barangays have helped increase the number of registrants. On-site registration at the City Mall, the local Robinsons Mall, and the Lorenzo Building in this capital city are also continuing with a list up, as well as other designated centers in the different local government units. PSA Dumaguete also holds satellite registrations for institutions that make special arrangements or requests with them. As of September 11, the PSA reported over 672,000 registrants from the 6 cities and 19 municipalities of Negros Oriental to the National Identification System. Meanwhile, additional registration centers were activated this month in other regions for the PhilSys Step 2 biometrics process. At least 11 areas nationwide have opened sign-up sites. The Philippine Statistics Authority, or PSA, announced in a recent post, adding that more will open in the next few days. These include regions 1, 2, and 3, 4B, 5, 8, 9, 11, 12, Caraga, and Bangsamoro Autonomous Region in Muslim Mindanao. A group of indigenous peoples from Surigao del Sur has issued a unified resolution calling for the ouster of Bayan Muna Party List Representative Eufemia Culyamat. The Provincial Tribal Council, consisting of Manobo, Mandaya, and the Mamanwa groups, issued a resolution dated September 2nd, resolution in Lianga, Surigao del Sur, declaring Culyamat persona non grata in their ancestral domains. Datu Rico Maca, Municipal Indigenous Peoples Mandatory Representative of San Miguel Town, said the IP tribes have declared Culyamat a threat to their youth. He added that tribal leaders and members have been killed, but Culyamat wants justice only for those supporting the New People's Army, or NPA. The resolution also stated that indigenous communities in Caraga region have been suffering in the hands of left-leaning organizations, terrorist groups, and their supporters. The council said Congress should not recognize Culyamat's claim as representative of the indigenous peoples of Caraga. The 5-year watershed rehabilitation program, jointly launched by the government and private sectors in 2017, may surpass its target to plant 5 million trees. The Metropolitan Waterworks and Sewerage System said 4.1 million trees have already been planted in over 9,000 hectares of identified denuded areas under the annual Million Trees Challenge, or AMTC. It said stakeholders are committed to planting 1.17 million trees that will be streamed on Facebook Live this year. The AMTC's Watershed Rehabilitation Program aims to restore the health of critical watersheds that supply water to Metro Manila and neighboring provinces. MWSS Chairman and Administrator Reynaldo Velasco said the AMTC is now on track for its nationwide expansion. In Legazpi City, pet dogs and dog owners were in for a treat as the city veterinary office opened a dog pantry at the SM City Legazpi over the weekend. At least 78 dogs were vaccinated against rabies, while their owners received free dog food, vitamins, and other pet items. The dog pantry was held in celebration of World Rabies Month. CBO Chief Dr. Emmanuel Estipona said about 70% of the targeted 20,000 dogs have been vaccinated since the start of this year under the city's vaccination program. He prodded owners to be responsible for their pets and prevent the spread of rabies by having their dogs vaccinated. Let's take another look at today's biggest stories. The guidelines for the enforcement of granular lockdowns in Metro Manila are out. We find out what's allowed and what's not under this scheme aimed at protecting health and reviving the economy. President Rodrigo Duterte wants cabinet officials to secure his nod first before attending Senate hearings on supposed deficiencies on the use of government funds. He wants them to be spared from unnecessary ramblings by lawmakers running in the polls. Gaining momentum, over 38.7 million COVID-19 jabs have so far been administered in the country, with more vaccine supplies set to arrive in the coming months. And the Department of Education extends until September 30 the deadline for enrollment of students in public schools as the country continues to adopt blended learning almost 2 years into the pandemic. As Filipinos, we all have a vital role to play in preventing the spread of COVID-19. So remember, wear your face masks and face shields, wash your hands often, practice safe physical distancing, go out only for essential reasons, and get vaccinated as soon as possible to protect ourselves, our families, and the community. Together, we can beat COVID-19. Thank you for watching another episode of the PNA Newsroom. For more news content, check our webpage or log on to the Philippine News Agency's Facebook and Twitter accounts. For more stories about the government and how it serves Filipinos, look for these hashtags in all of our social media platforms and websites. We are shown on the pages of the PCOO and its attached agencies. Also, watch us on television on PTV4 and IBC13. And that's your daily dose of the biggest stories that you need to know. From the PNA Newsroom, we tell stories that inspire change. I am William Theo. Good day, everyone.